Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're grateful for your participation here. Welcome to the Converge North Central Search Team Town Hall with our nominee, Mark Bjorlo. And thanks for being here. Over the next hour, you're going to have an opportunity to have a brief recap of what the search team went through in terms of our process, finding Mark as our candidate and nominee for the district executive minister position. And then you're going to get a chance to hear from Mark. And that's really the heart of what this morning is this opportunity to ask some questions of Mark and just get to know his heart and the call that God has on his life. So we are using a little bit different format here on this webinar that maybe you may or may not be familiar with it. This is it's a webinar style. And so the only people that you'll see are those of us who are going to be presenting. And you can communicate with us only through the chat or the Q&A feature. And so I want to encourage you to do that. This will be an opportunity for you to ask questions of Mark or of our search committee. And so you can do that by just putting those in the chat again, or the Q&A. Both of those come to those of us who are presenting. And you'll see a few different presenters come in and out of this webinar. So as we formally kick it off, let me introduce myself for those who I've not met. My name is Kyle, and I am serving as the executive pastor at Wooddale Church in the Minnesota and the Twin Cities area, and have been fortunate enough to be part of the search team and was asked to chair our search team. And we had a phenomenal search committee. You're going to hear from three of those individuals a little bit later here in our meeting. And God really provided. There so many wonderful leaders throughout Converge North Central, and those who God asked to be on the search team or allowed to be on the search team were it was a great group and really humbled to be part of that. And one of the members who helped us along the way was President Scott Rideout, and that's who is joining us here right at the top of the call. Scott, as we set out at the CNC search team, one of our very first conversations as we were starting to assemble was that we were committed to not only a very prayerful and diligent process, but one that we really wanted to be inclusive of national. And you were so gracious to offer your time and your wisdom and your prayers and your support along the way. And while you were careful to let us know that because of your role with national, you didn't have a vote, we wanted you to have a voice. And we're so thankful for the voice that you gave to this process. And so I thought it'd just be appropriate for us this morning to have you kick off this meeting in prayer. And then, Scott, just from your perspective as our president at Converge, can you just give some of that perspective on the process that CNC went through with this search team, as well as your excitement about what we believe God's going to be doing here at Converge North Central?
Glad to do it. So let's go ahead and pray, everyone. So, Father in heaven, we love you. Today we bow down before you and acknowledge you as Lord of our lives. We choose to follow you and to honor you with the way we live. I pray for the people in this call. I pray, first of all, as we open your word, it would just come to life in our lives. We would apply it to our everyday situations, to our family, to our coworkers, to our neighbors. We would try to live your word. I pray that we would be evangelistic, that we would see the opportunity to see help others meet, know, and follow Jesus. I pray that we would work together well, and that we would figure out how to encourage each other in love and good deeds. I pray for this next season for Converge North Central. I know that we're so grateful for the many years of faithfulness to the gospel and to the Great Commission, but we do believe the best is yet to come. And so, God, would you embolden us? Would you empower us? Would you remind us of the privilege it is to follow you and to know you, and the opportunity to help others know you? God, I pray as this process goes, I pray for Elizabeth and for Mark and for their family, and just ask for your grace over them and your grace over all the churches, all the congregants, all the missionaries that come from the North Central District. And again, Lord, we follow you, we love you, and we're so grateful to have this celebration today and getting to know Mark. I pray that the questions, the conversation will be helpful, and that people would discern what they should do. And I just pray again that we would stack hands, get behind Mark and his leadership. And again, Lord, that all things would be honoring to you. And I pray in Jesus' name, amen. Well, you're right, Kyle. It is one of my opportunities as president to be a part of each district's search for a new leader. Let me just back up a little bit and say, first of all, I'm so grateful for Dan Carlson. I'm grateful for the friendship when I would come to North Central, I would stay at their home. And he and Sarah they were great hosts. They love God. They love me and Lisa, and we're just so grateful for them. And whatever happens now, we're standing on the shoulders of many great things that they did. I also want to thank Wick and Jonathan Dahl and Mandy and Joel and Carolyn for the work in this interim period. That's just an extra weight put on them, and I think they just did admirably. Wick especially stepping into that interim role. Just want to say thank you for that. So when I got the call to be a part of the search team, I was excited about that. Just so you know, this is the 7th district that has changed leaders in the last 6 years. So God is doing something new in Converge. This is a big deal. Pac West is going through this right now as well. And so, and looking at North Central with Bethel there, with all these influential churches, with a diversity of rural, urban, suburban, cultural, what a great picture what Converge is becoming. And so I was very excited to be a part of all this. And then I met the search team, and I remember my first meeting. I'm thinking, if any district had this group of churches stacked hands behind them, boy, what could God do with that kind of leadership? I just want to commend all the search team members. I mean, they came from Iowa and Minnesota. They came from large and small. I mean, it was a great group of people. And again, I would beg that group continue to stack their hands on the vision that we have for North Central. And I beg God for groups like that in every district, because again, the church is the power of the district, the leaders, the pastors. And I'm so excited about that. And then to have an insider, to have Mark be the one who says, I want to put my name forward. Mark and I, just so you know, we've known each other for a while. He was a generosity director for me. He and Paul Johnson, we went through some training for a couple of years together. I have great respect for Mark. Mark was also on the team that chose me as president, so I kind of owe him, right? So I'm just kidding about that. But, you know, I just know Mark for a long time. I have great respect for him and his experience. And I love the choice that God has brought forward and how God has moved on their hearts to take this position. I am going to say this, that 2020 was it was a hard year. It was a strange year. It was a unique year. And yet God used it in such powerful ways to remind us that the church is not a building we sit in, it's a movement we choose to be a part of. And we've got to figure out now in this next season how to reestablish our evangelistic fervor, how to reestablish church planting as the front edge, the cutting edge of the movement of North Central. We've got to remember again that everything we do is to honor God through the gospel living, gospel sharing. And I just can't wait to see. And I think that Mark is a great guy, a perfect candidate for North Central to be able to help us move forward together in that. So I'm looking forward to the time. I'm just going to ask all you pastors and leaders out there, be courageous in your faith. Don't just walk with Jesus, help others walk with Jesus. So I would just tell you, hey, we've got this great opportunity. Be courageous, move forward. One of the things we want you to ask you to join on, every one of us needs to figure out how to get involved in church planting. We've got this goal of 312, 50 of them in North Central, and we just got a great opportunities to move forward. There are dozens and dozens of communities in Iowa and Minnesota that desperately need a gospel preaching, life-changing message from a church that's in their community. And I'm just going to ask you also to not just feel your calling to your church, but embrace the calling you have to community. Have a saturation strategy for where you live so that every person, no matter what their background, no matter what their belief system, has the opportunity to hear the gospel in your community. I'm just absolutely convinced that God is going to use this in a powerful, powerful way. So thank you again, Kyle, for the opportunity to share a little bit. Let me just end with this. My verse for this past 12 months in COVID has been this. It's been Romans 12 verses 11 and 12. Never be lacking in zeal. Keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. And I'm confident you'll do that. But hey, join with me trusting God for this next season. And again, I'm very excited about Mark. And again, Kyle, thank you so much for your leadership on this team as well.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for your words, and appreciate the support and the partnership that you've had along the way. We're very grateful to have you as our president. So In fact, we're getting some chats that are coming in that are saying thank you, President Rideout. So appreciate your words.
My privilege. Thank you so
All
much.
right, we're gonna say goodbye to President Rideout and hello to a few of our search team members. And their opportunity here this morning is to let you know a little bit about the process that we went through. Let me just remind you that on this webinar, you can send in some questions. I'll be collecting those and we'll be asking Mark or responding to those here at the end of our session. And this town hall is one of the things that we're doing in advance of a business meeting that is going to take place on Friday, April 16th. Friday, April 16th at 9 a.m. And that's when we at Converge North Central will be voting for the nominee, and that's for Mark. So this is an opportunity for us at Converge North Central to get to know him in a little bit better way in advance of that vote. So I'm joined here this morning by Paul Johnson, who is a senior pastor at Woodridge Church here in the Minnesota region and has been with Converge North Central for many years. Chris Rigg, who is the executive pastor of Expansion at Prairie Lakes, and Mike Howard, lead pastor at Revision Church in Des Moines. Gentlemen, the three of you were part of the search team. We had a number of other women and men that were part of the search team as well. But so the three of you are representing that search team here this morning. Thanks, guys, for taking some time to share. Paul, I want to begin with you. When we gathered together as a search team, we went through a process of saying before we jump right into searching for a candidate, we really need to come together and prayerfully understand just kind of who is it, what is it that we're looking for in a new district executive minister. And Paul, you were an essential part of that process of really trying to discern what is it that we're looking for in the next candidate and why. And it was as Scott really said, you know, we've had some really strong history in the past of good leadership at CNC, and we were building upon that, but also in the midst of COVID and in the midst of what the future looks like, really needed to get right the candidate profile. So can you just kind of let us in on a little bit on what those conversations were like and what were we looking for in a candidate?
Well, I would say the biggest thing we did is we did a lot of listening forums to hear from all of you. And we took very careful note of that and tracked the characteristics that all of our churches in Iowa and every part of Minnesota said would be important. And, you know, some of the themes that came out were, you know, a continued spiritual leader, a strong person that has organizational and leadership gifts. And the key things that I heard again and again is someone who would connect us together and connect us around mission. And that became real critical in what I heard from all of you as we began the process of looking.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Chris, let me have you jump in here. What else can you add in terms of just that profile? What is it we were looking for as we set out in this process?
Ideally, I think we were looking for someone who, to use a Jim Collins phrase, would preserve the core, the history, the legacy of what is so rich and solid, while also stimulating progress in some areas where we felt we needed either to do some catch up or we really needed to strategically move ahead aggressively in this next season. And so, as we were looking for candidates, we were looking for people who had perhaps a network in both Iowa and Minnesota, some established credibility, and could really appreciate the richness of both the IBC and the MBC history. So that was one. Also, someone who had either lived or could appreciate the challenges of church planting. I mean, that is something that we are so greedy for. And so, we were looking almost as a bonus on the resumes for someone who either had some experience or who had done some coaching or church planning or multi-siting or something. And so that was an element too that I think we were kind of hoping for.
Yeah, Chris, I want to pick up on a phrase that you used there. Was thinking about kind of aggressively, this whole idea of forward momentum, forward movement. can you just unpack that like a little bit more for us? What as a search team, we kind of spent some time sitting in that and getting excited about that. Talk just a little bit about maybe the potential that we saw within Minnesota and Iowa for Converge to move forward.
Sure. Colin, my notes indicate two areas, and there may have been more, but the two that I circled in red were connectivity. We felt like we've just sort of like the diaspora. We've just scattered a little bit, and there's an opportunity to recapture a sense of belonging and connection, and not to dilly-dally about that. We need to be pretty aggressive about that because we see the strategic value in that. Over and over in the listening sessions, people indicated a desire and really more than just a desire, but kind of a strategic longing for the ability to network and trade best practices, and we're better together, right? The second one was financial stability. And just that was a little bit of a reality check, realizing that this is a season when we may need to do some catch up and to really make sure that our staff is well resourced, that our initiatives are well funded, that our camps are supported and in good repair. And so it was critical. While that may not have been such an issue 10 years ago, we feel like currently that's one of those areas for some strategic and innovative and creative but aggressive leadership.
Yeah, well, that's well said, Chris. And points for working in the phrase dilly-dally. That was well placed. In my notes, Chris, one of the things that I remember we talked about as a search team is there's like 8.8 million people between Minnesota and Iowa, and so many of them need Jesus, and we want to be part of the movement that's going to go let them know about our Savior. And so, just the excitement that our search team had for the future and the optimism we had for CNC. Mike, I want to bring you in here. What else can you add in terms of kind of what was just on your heart, and as you remember, as we were searching for what we wanted in a DEM, what really kind of sparked your excitement?
Yeah, just similarly to what Paul and Chris said, as a kid who grew up in a small church in Iowa that had to close its doors, then a medium-sized church, spent a decade of my life in the Twin Cities working in and attending mega churches, then planted a church. It was important to find someone who can speak to that. I think Iowa and Minnesota, we have a culture that's different from the other districts, but as much as there is that unites us, there are things that divide us. We are Iowa and we are Minnesota. We are rural, urban, and suburban. We're mega, multi-site. We're small. We're old. We're new. We're plants. And somebody who can speak to all of that stuff helps us live out that vision. I mean, Scott Rideout, our president, says all the time, we're better together. And we believe that. But what we learned from the listening sessions, what most of us know who've been a part of CNC for any amount of time, is that we're not really together now. And we need to unite what has been fractured. And so one was really looking for someone who could speak into Iowa and Minnesota, rural, urban, small, planting, mega church, multi-site, and somebody who had lived all of those experiences. And then two, somebody like, I don't know where I stole the word, but the word passionary. Like, we unite around vision. We unite on the mission. And that's what's going to bring us together when we fracture for a lack of it. And so we needed somebody who's not just, who doesn't just have vision, but has the passion to drive that vision and cast it in a way that's compelling enough to bring us together. And I think, so looking for somebody who's a passionate visionary who says, hey, this is the mission. This is the key thing. And like you said, Kyle, we got 8 million plus people. That's the mission. And that's what unites us. And so somebody who can get fired up about that and unite all of us around going after those 8 million people. So it's real hard to get to hell from Iowa and Minnesota. That's what we were looking for. And really excited about the way Mark fits the bill on all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's so good, Mike. And we're going to get into Mark here in just a minute. The passionary, a number of pastors right now are trying to right in that new word. So well done with that. And, I think, Mike, it was, we certainly noted the differences with Minnesota and Iowa, but then even saying, man, it's even more than that. I mean, there's like regions throughout CNC, you've got northern Minnesota and you've got west, and, you just all these different things. And so, I think we found it wasn't even just those two. It was just kind of, there's a lot of uniqueness within CNC, and we really wanted to find somebody that could speak into that uniqueness and really be able to identify with pastors and churches who are in a variety of different settings. That was so key for us. And Mike, I really appreciate you camping on that and bringing that out. So Paul, let me go back to you. So we went through a very lengthy process once we had established our job description. So just to kind of let everybody get caught up, we spent the summer listening to CNC, a number of listening sessions throughout August, and many of you participated in that. Thank you for that feedback that you provided for us. As a search team, we distilled all that down and said, okay, so based on that, let's craft a job description. And that's where that document came as a result of what we heard from CNC and what we, through prayer and discernment and discussion, felt like we were being led. We then presented that to the Board of Stewards. They affirmed it, and then we went to work to go find someone to fit that description and fit this profile that we had built. And we spent the fall doing that. And Paul, we had a number of incredibly qualified candidates. We were so impressed by some of the people that we had the opportunity to speak with. And why Mark? Why do we feel like Mark is the best nominee and the right person to fit this description?
Kyle, let me tell you my perspective on that. I did appreciate the strong HR background our team had, and that we did a nationwide search. The things that stood out for me about Mark, and that I heard from other members of our team, is he has a city and rural experience. He has experience as a staff pastor, a lead pastor. He's a gifted teacher, but also a very gifted and strong coach. He loves our region. He loves camping. One thing that impresses me with Mark is he hears from God. He regularly seeks out times to hear from God. He has a strong understanding of theology and the Bible. And, we're in good hands in terms of his understanding, a deep commitment to evangelism, strong experience in church planting, committed to actually enjoys fundraising and knows how to teach people to enter into generosity. He has experience as someone who started something and built it and all the different phases that they've gone through. So all of us as pastors, as we've gone through different phases in ministry, Mark probably has some way to understand that and realize that. When he spoke about his vision, it was really a vision to unite us in teams so we would be better together, and to get us, to spur us on to be on mission. And I love the fact that he talked about wanting to know our churches and know our pastors so that we could be united together. And maybe just last thing I'd say, to me, being on this has been a wake-up call that, it's about Mark, and I'm really grateful that we have someone to recommend like Mark. I just want to challenge all of you that are pastors and leaders. This is a time where we need to step our game up. We need to commit together to the mission that God's given us, and to the incredible resources we have in all of our churches. I believe I believe that Mark can lead us, but we've got to be the engine that enters into doing the work that God's calling us to do together.
Yeah, well said, and wise words, Paul. Thank you for that challenge. It's good. Chris, I'm going to let you jump in. What else stands out to you about Mark, and why the search committee and team unanimously recommended him for this role?
Yeah, I don't want to re-preach what Paul just shared. That was really a very thorough set of insights, and I am aligned. The one I would add or underscore is Mark's realness. He has a successful resume, but it's tempered with some struggle and some setbacks, and even a few self-imposed scars. And Mark was able to talk transparently about that. A long, successful career in ministry with a beautiful blend of transparency and candor. There's confidence in his voice, but there's also Holy Spirit sensitivity. And apart from all of his pedigree and flashy credentials, I really appreciated his approachability and his humanness as a leader. And I think there were so many of us that as we moved through the process just felt like, wow, this is a guy we'd block for. This is a guy we'd follow and defend. And it's not because of his high and mighty authority. It's really because of his realness.
Yeah, well said, Chris. Mike, your perspective, what else can we add about what stood out to you about Mark?
Yeah, just piggyback quickly off Chris. He's a humble guy, like a guy with a track record that would leave a lot of leaders in a space where they're less humble than he is, but he's able to talk about his strengths and his weaknesses and to lean into them. And somebody who's given his life to helping people meet, know, and follow Jesus and loves Christ. And those are the only kind of guys any of us are going to follow. Men, women, whoever they are in the church, like the leaders we rally behind are the ones who love Jesus and who love him humbly and aren't real proud or real self-involved about what God has done through them. And I think Mark has a deep ability to articulate that he has been a tool in God's toolbox, and God's worked through him in successful ways because he's humbly come and allowed God to do whatever God's doing. And just like Paul said, he's a guy who regularly seeks that. And I'd rally behind a guy like that. I'll follow somebody who's trying to follow Jesus. Like, we got to follow leaders who are following Christ, and Mark's following Christ. He's doing it humbly, but he's doing it successfully because he's found ways to maximize the gift set that he has and to staff around the gift set that he doesn't. He's got a track record of that too. And that's what we need. Again, better together. We have a team of people in the CNC office. We have pastors all around this district, and Mark's a guy who knows what God's gifted him to do. And he's taken steps throughout his entire lifetime, his entire career in ministry to maximize that gifting, and then to surround himself with people who can do what he can't. And that's what we need if we're going to drive things forward. And so really excited just to see a candidate who knows what he can do and does it to the best of his ability and brings people alongside him humbly, gives authority away to those who can do what he can't. And I really appreciated that about Mark and about his history throughout the interview process and through talking to people who know him and who've worked with him in the past.
Yeah, that's good, Mike. Thanks. And I want to thank all you guys for your involvement here in this process. And for those of you that are watching in on this, this is just a little glimpse of what our Friday morning search calls were like. It was like inspiring to be around these guys and gals and just their heart for Jesus and their love for the church. And so just want to make sure that we give full credit to everybody else. So in addition to the folks that you're seeing here on this call, we also had John Tolley, lead pastor of Oakwood, who was on the search committee, Wes Foster, co-pastor at the church at Union Park, Jill Fox, who is the executive pastor at Westwood Community Church, Pam Wymore, retired county supervisor at Grace Church there in Iowa, Dale Peterson, who is part of the executive director of the Eagle Brook Association with Eagle Brook Church, in addition to Scott jumping in on the call. So I want to thank the entire search committee, the diligence and the very thoroughness. Y'all spent a lot of time on this call, and I'm so thankful and so grateful for it. So thanks for them. The only thing that we got on the chat that we were corrected: Northern Minnesota is not a region, it's a lifestyle. So well said. And maybe we'll leave it there before we descend into to jokes about Minnesota. But hey, thanks guys for joining. We're going to say goodbye to you. We're going to say hello to Mark. It's time for us to spend a little bit of time with him and get to know him. And so grateful. Hey, just as we're welcoming Mark, I want to let you know that this whole search process was one that involved several regions throughout CNC. So when it came time for us to have Mark as our final candidate, we did kind of parade Mark around. And so Mark, we got to spend a lot of time with you kind of throughout CNC. So we spent some time up in the northern part of Minnesota with a pastor in the Duluth area, and spent some time with his church and hearing what was going on kind of in that section of CNC. We spent some time in the cities. We were hosted for a dinner by a church here in the Twin Cities area. You spent quite a bit of time in Iowa. You had a chance to be engaged with people who are church planters, pastor of diverse color and culture, pastors from rural areas, pastors from established churches that were larger. Mark, you spent some time with Bethel in terms of the leadership at Bethel, President Allen, and then spent some time with the head of the dean of Bethel Seminary and our board of stewards. I mean, it was a lengthy process. A lot of people were involved, and Mark, we're just so thankful that we believe God has called you into this and that you went through that whole process with us. So, Mark, let's just kind of start with what's probably most important on this call. We want to get to know you just a little bit. How did you meet Jesus? When did you come to faith in Christ?
Well, the process was extensive, that's for sure. You guys didn't miss many boxes, I don't think. I appreciated that. When I trace back to my faith story and kind of where it began, it started with a tumultuous beginning. I was a troubled teen, and parents had divorced. Family was out of sorts, and I was acting out. And there was an organization that was reaching out to troubled teens and their families that was just on the cusp of beginning, called Treehouse. And now, if you're from Minneapolis at all, you probably are familiar with Treehouse Youth and Family Outreach Centers. There's now, I think, 500 or 600 of them around the country. But it was so interesting that happened to be the first question, because sitting on the desk, I've got a book that I got yesterday from the founder, and I'm featured heavily in this book because I was considered the first Treehouse kid. And they went into the principal's office one day and they said, if you had a half a dozen or a dozen kids you wish weren't at this school, we'd love to work with them. And he called me into the office. I was sitting outside his office, as I typically was almost every day. And so I got invited into being part of that Treehouse inception. And over the course of years, they just spoke to me that, Mark, you are lovable, you are capable, you are worthwhile, you're worth being loved without any strings attached, and you're not alone in the stuff that you're struggling with. So over the course of time, that kind of wore down my inhibitions about Christ. And there was one day on my way back from a trip from Kenora, Canada, where we'd been fishing together, and I just sort of recognized that the disciples believed Jesus was the real deal. And thousands of years later, I'm sitting in a van with modern day disciples that believe Jesus is the savior of the world, the forgiver of sins. And I got on my knees in the van. Now, there wasn't chairs or seats. It was a throwback from hippie days, I guess, but and we didn't have seatbelt laws. But I just got on my knees in the van and I prayed. I said, Lord, if this is real, I want it. And felt like God honored that prayer. And I got home and I said to my mom that I'd given my life to Christ. And I remember she always had hoped that maybe I would, but she never imagined it was going to be in her lifetime. I was such a difficult kid, and it changed everything. It started a direction in my life that was about Christ and ministry, and that was my junior year of high school, just before my senior year, and then went into senior year of high school. And Treehouse, when I graduated from high school, hired me on their staff. I was the only only kid that had ever been hired out of high school to be a part of the Treehouse staff. I thought it was because I was awesome. Came to find out later that it was because they were so afraid that if they let go of me, that I'd fall away from the faith, and so they wanted to continue to disciple me. The only way they could figure to do that was to hire me, and they went to the church that I had grown up in and had gotten kicked out of, and they asked if they would sponsor me. Calvary Lutheran Church in Golden Valley sponsored my summer staff that year, and it was because of their investment and Treehouse's investment that I continued on in ministry for sure, and got discipled in that direction.
Yeah, I praise God for that, and may all of us be so diligent in our commitment to disciple others. That's great. Mark, tell us a little bit about your family. We'd love to hear how you and your wife met, and tell us about your kids.
Yeah, if I can, I'm going to just do a quick screen share. I thought maybe you would ask, and maybe you can enable that. If you can, I'll share a quick photo. If not, that's fine too. But my wife and I met years ago, and we well, obviously years ago, 29 actually. We've been married 29 years, so a few years ago. But I was living in San Francisco and going to computer school and working as a youth pastor at a inner city church, and was developing a youth group and caring for these kids and teens. But it was so interesting because my wife was in Portland, Oregon, and I had a buddy of mine that was going to Multnomah School of the Bible. He called me one day and said, "Hey, I've decided to get baptized. Would you come and be part of that? Would you come and be at my baptism?" And so I drove up to Portland, Oregon. I'm sitting in a room, and I realized I'd never been baptized, and I'd never really understood baptism. But I sat through the baptism class with him that they were having just before the day before the baptism. And I'm like, "Hey, how do I get in on this?" It just happened that it was my wife's church, and she was in the audience and was able to watch me get baptized with my buddy. And we made that kind of a faith commitment together to live out our faith to the best of our ability. A couple months later, she was down in San Francisco at a dental seminar, and my friend who had known both of us asked if I'd show her around the city, and I said, yeah, that actually wasn't uncommon. People, when they're traveling to San Francisco, would often send their friends to have me give them a little tour. And so I gave her a little tour, and it was one of those heart palpitations. And I'm like, man, this is someone I could really imagine spending time with. And within a year, we actually were married. So that was some 28 years ago that we got married, and or something like that. Maybe it was 29. I'm probably wrong, but it was a few years back. And we've got 5 beautiful kids. Oldest one is married, and then I've got a son who lives in Boston, and he's building a life. And I've got another daughter who just married an officer in the Navy, and they're out in Connecticut and starting a life. And then I've got 2 at home yet. I've got a teenage daughter and a young elementary age son, 9 years old almost. And so got a good spread of kids that's kind of kept us a little bit young as we've chased them around. So
yeah, and recently, Mark, you had the privilege of officiating at your daughter's wedding.
Yeah, I've done that a couple times now, and what a weird experience it is to both walk a daughter down the aisle and to officiate. Actually, it feels a little bit like that with this church transition too. Just you give birth to something, and that go through these incredible teenage years that you go, oh man, this is crazy. And then you wind up looking around and going, this is a beautiful woman that I now have to walk down an aisle and hand off to a man that I did not choose. And it's like, so much of that is familiar, having done it with my daughters, that makes reflecting on what I'm going through right now make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, indeed. So tell us a little bit about the Journey North, Mark, for those who may not be familiar with that ministry
Yep,
and your how God invited you into that process and just what God's
sure.
done with the Journey North.
Yeah, was at a really great church down in the Twin Cities as an adult ministries pastor. And in some ways, that was some of the best ministry years of my life. And I loved working there. And as I saw a number of pastors coming through that were being sent out to start churches. Ben McEachran and Brad Reese and Chris Reinertson and some of these guys were blazing through our church and getting sent out. And I felt my heart kind of experience affinity with them. And I was like, and I was looking like, man, if those guys can do this, maybe I could do this. And Scott stirred my heart for church planting, and I went to the senior pastor and I talked about that. And we began to dream about what that might look like, and ultimately through a process of searching and seeking God, felt like He was calling me to the Brainerd Lakes area, and we started the Journey North with this idea that maybe God would allow us to help make central and northern Minnesota the hardest place to go to hell from. And it's kind of been my life ambition to make that idea a reality. And so over the course of time, we've started a number of churches, and we went multi-site, and we saw hundreds and hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of people accept Christ through the ministry here. We've baptized almost 1,000 people over the time that I've been here, and grown a really successful, significant outpost for Christ's fame to be magnified in the Brainerd Lakes area. And I'm just grateful to God that He's allowed us to have that impact here. And then as we expanded into Aiken to now understand a little bit more of what even a rural ministry and multi-site both have for, I think, our conference as a whole. And I think as awesome as multi-site is for a church like Wooddale and Eaglebrook, I think there's a significant potential for outstate, where we might pick some of these medium-sized cities, small cities, to plant churches. There's a lot of towns around them that can be impacted through multi-site. So I think there's a lot of reason for us to think multiplication in a variety of strategy as we look at Iowa and Minnesota, as we build really hopefully an evangelistic, kingdom building, gospel centered movement.
Yeah. So Mark, here's the big question. You've got this ministry that God's been moving in, and you've walked through so much with this ministry, given birth to it and seen it grow. Why take this job at Converge North Central? What is it that God's been stirring in you?
Yeah, well, it's in fairness, it's a mixed bag. It's not without some pain. The idea of leaving this moment in ministry where finally things are clicking, and the staff I've got around me is amazing. We've got strong financials. It's just, in so many ways, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that God would have stirred my heart for this, and yet in other ways it makes all the sense in the world. But ultimately, I did go in August down to Pine Lake Camp and spent a little bit of time just kind of sorting through whether or not I really should consider seriously this. People were starting to tap my shoulder and say, we're thinking that maybe you're the guy to lead this for the next season. And I went and spent time at a cabin that they have down there called Solitude, which, by the way, for you pastors, it is a fabulous place to go and reacquaint your heart with the Spirit, and to spend time with your Father. And I kind of crawled up on Dad's lap and just spent time in prayer, and I felt like He just spoke very, very clearly to me back in August that this was the next chapter of my life. And I came back and I was in a bad mood about it. It was pretty sour. My wife will tell you I was as irritable as I've ever been in that subsequent few weeks, and well, maybe until really this past week, when I've also been quite cranky. the idea of sacrificing and giving up this church that I love has not been an easy decision, and is met with some pain. However, the reality, I went with kind of one of your favorite passages of scripture, Kyle, the Luke trilogy of God's passion for the lost, and I was meditating on that and seeing those stories and wound up in Luke 15 and was meditating on one of the verses, and I felt like God just spoke to my heart. He said, it's time to turn the page. And I'm like, well, what is that? Metaphorically, am I turning a page on the church? Am I turning a page? What does that mean? And then I looked down on the Bible in my lap and I just said, well, maybe it means just turn the page. And I turned the page and I went from Luke 15 to Luke 16, and my eyes fell on a verse that was corresponding with the Luke 15 verse I was meditating on. And it was, those who've been faithful with little and are going to be given more. And I'm like, oh man, God, you have this for me, don't you? And it was really clear in my heart that I was going to take this role on as a next ministry challenge. And
it's a good word.
And so I put my name in October. It took me a little while to get my name into the mix, and then have been waiting patiently for others to see what I believe God had shown me is the next chapter.
Yeah, and we as a
and
search team
by patient, I don't mean to interrupt you, but by patient, I don't mean I was patient at all, but I've been waiting.
That's right. No, but it was so fun to just watch the search team come into unity with that and alignment with that sense of God's call on your heart. So, Mark, let's do this. Let me ask one final question for you, and then for those who are joining us, send in some questions. A couple of questions are already coming in, and we would love to see a few more of those come in. And we'll have an opportunity to ask Mark those questions here in our final 10 minutes or so on the call. So, Mark, just real brief, if you can be with this, but all right, what is your heart and your hope for Converge North Central?
Yeah, so a couple of people have shared already this notion that we're better together, and I just don't believe that that's true. I believe we want it to be true. I think we like the slogan, and I think we all understand the value of that nomenclature. I think we get the idea. I just don't think that we have lived that out very effectively in the last dozen years, and so I really want to see us come to a place where better together means something. And so even the way that I've begun to kind of consider what my role would be and what I saw as pathways to help that be true, I see myself really more as a missionary to our district than anything else, and I want to kind of take on a role of maybe the old Methodist rider and run some horses into the ground and connect our church, much like Skip Hansen and in his role in Iowa. The way he saw that job when he was the DEM in Iowa has really resonated with my heart, and I want to work inside of that vein in uniting our districts around teams that can kind of harken back. For those of you who were been part of this for a long time, we were really effective at lead teams for a while, and something similar to that is a build around doing some aggressive evangelism, building around church planting and multiplication as an intensive through this next season of ministry.
Yeah, we're excited about that. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, questions are flying in here, Mark. So we're going to go through some of these. Thanks everybody for doing this. I appreciate your participation in this. Skip is picking up on your horse theme there that you just mentioned about running a horse into the ground. He said, talk about how you'll handle the inevitable tension that will confront that you will confront between those who want to preserve what we have and those who want to spur the horse.
Badly. I think I'll handle that badly. I'm going to drive towards something futuristic, and I'll try, Skip. I'll try to do it better than I think I will, but I think I'm going to be more towards, bringing us to something new than holding on to something in the past. It's not that I don't value what's in the past. I just know my character traits. Or I'll try to honor the past, but I'm gonna really drive us towards evangelism and some of the stuff in the past. Let me backpedal a little bit. I mean, our irenic spirit. I think we've somewhat lost that in today's culture. I think we can come back to something that's very familiar to some of the people that have been around for a long time, and our passion for the Word of God. I think that there's some strategies that I can bring us forward through technology, but also harken back to some things that were familiar that I've got kind of in my mind of ways that we can unite around some strategy together. But I might need some coaching, Skip, on how to do some of that. So I might be leaning into you more than you would want.
Probably not more than you would want, but let me pick up on one of those other historic themes here. Mark, and this comes in from Jeff. CNC has an amazing history of global missions. So how do you see CNC as being a leader, especially the office, in terms of sending?
So that's a really great question. One of the things that I would say about that you probably are aware that we are the leading district in supporting missionaries for Converge, but we really do it by accident. We don't do it with any kind of intentionality right now, and it really goes back to the fact that it's deep within our roots and within our heritage to be a sending movement. And as a result of that, we've recently, under the national leadership, kind of started to figure out ways with which we can leverage reaching the most unreached people groups. And some of you maybe know that I've been part of the consortium for leading our Spice Islands initiative. And that's, by the way, kind of an interesting story too, because I was conceived in Indonesia and born in the United States by just a few weeks. I was almost an Indonesian citizen, and wound up because of my parents. I wound up having what was probably the premier Indonesian art collection, but our house burned down a few years ago. We lost everything. And in losing everything, one of the things that we lost was, a significant investment in Indonesian art. Well, when insurance and stuff is coming together, it's like, I don't really feel a compulsion to replace the Indonesian art, but my heart really went to supporting the ministry and maybe collecting Christ followers in Indonesia. And so I've been part of supporting that process now for a while, but we've got a number of consortium leaders, but I don't think that the churches as a whole know who the consortium leaders are or where they're investing. And to be able to bring some of the consortium leaders together around a shared mission and then making available to our districts, much like we were invested in Ukraine under Truett's great leadership, to bring some significant investment into our shared mission to reach the most unreached people groups, I think will be a significant moment for us as a church to harken back to the history and recognize what God is already doing in our district of Minnesota, Iowa. So
yeah, good. Mark, Ned wants to know this. What is the most important expectation that we should have of you? It's a good question.
Yeah. So I think Ned, if you think of a mashup between Truett and Dan, I'm probably something of a mashup. I mean, I laugh loud and I laugh fast, but I don't laugh anywhere as compelling as Dan never did. I love people, but I tire of them after a while. So I love people, but I'm probably a little bit more like Truett in that I lean more towards strategy than affection. And so I'm probably, if you can for those of you who have been around for a long time, if you think of those two guys, smash them together, you're probably going to have your expectations probably pretty set properly. So
yeah, so I mean, Mark, we think it would be fair to say that we can expect that you're going to make things happen.
I tend to move pretty fast, and I surround myself with people that can move fast. And I think that we have a lot of leaders in our district that move fast as well. And I think we'll get a lot of people investing in our district together. I do love this search team, and I don't expect that they're going to be off the hook just because this season has ended. I think we'll leverage a lot of people to do a lot of things together. So yeah.
Yeah, which is exciting. Yeah, that prospect of being invited in. Mark, 2 different questions have come in about your first 100 days. That seems to kind of be a thing in leadership transitions. So maybe give us just a little snapshot. What are kind of be some of your immediate priorities?
So there's, I think real wisdom in learning before you leap. And I've got a first year kind of schedule scratched out, and have shared that with the search team and with others. But I'm going to spend probably a lot of the first 100 days kind of understanding and learning a little bit more. I think I know a lot, and that's really dangerous. And so you want to know that you know, not just think that you know. And so I'll spend some time really learning. That's going to actually begin even in this interim time. So when I start, should you confer on me this role, I'll begin on the 22nd of April, Lord willing, and the first 100 days is going to be a lot of hearing, a lot of listening, and a lot of learning. So,
yeah, that's good. Andrew has a great question. He says many rural churches are in need of revitalization, and I mean, Mark, I think that's probably specific to that context. That we could probably expand that out and say a lot of churches are in need of revitalization, but specifically for the rural churches, what plans do you have to help lead rural churches in advancing the gospel and the mission of Converge?
Yeah, and it's so great that a number of years ago we had a chance to become a multi-site campus in Aiken and start understanding ways with which we can help a rural church kind of coalesce around specifically vision for meaningful ministry to the community, and as well as evangelism. And if you can coalesce around those 2 key themes, it's amazing how many leaders feel re-energized. And again, it's going to be helping coalesce vision and really around evangelism and outreach. This is not rocket science. And so it's like how basic can it be? Well, it can be that basic. And if we can do it really effectively to the exclusion of maybe doing a lot of other things, it's amazing what you can get done. The other thing is rural matters. It matters a lot. There's dying communities that need life, and we don't want just to abandon our small and dying communities. There's people in there that matter to God deeply, and so we're gonna help reach people all across Minnesota and Iowa.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, Ed from Iowa has a question kind of specific as a maybe an appropriate follow-up to this one. He says, Mark, how are you going to connect us pastors in Iowa and strengthen us and the churches? How can we gather and strategize on planning and repurposing Iowa churches? So I know there are many regions throughout CNC. It's not just Minnesota, Iowa, but specifically this came in from pastors in Iowa.
I have my family kind of heralds from Spring Grove, Minnesota, which is right on the border of Iowa and Minnesota, near Decorah. And I've got family that have lived in Iowa, run businesses in Iowa. One of my uncles was a accountant, large accounting firm. Some of you would probably know. He started in Des Moines, and Iowa is just as a generalization, it's an interesting nut because there's a fierce independence in Iowa and within Iowans, that they are pull themselves up by their bootstraps and then be mad at the rest of the country for not noticing. And that's it. I was down in Iowa with my prayer time, and there was I was on YouTube, and there was a candidate that you had running for Congress or your state Congress or something, I don't know, state senator or something. But she was like, "This is flyover country," and we're proud of that, And it's like, and that is kind of how they see themselves. I mean, they really are proud people. It's like, we want the country to notice us, but if you don't, that's fine, and we'll do it by ourselves anyway. That, it means that we have to recognize that teaching better together with Minnesota is going to be hard, because we're Minnesotans and we're not Iowans, and they don't really need us, and they know they don't really need us, but at the same time we kind of need each other. So I think learning how to crack that nut is going to be something we all need to learn how to do.
Yeah, and I think that's a good, yeah, I appreciate that, Mark. And I think that was something that, that even the nature of our search team was really made up of regions throughout CNC, and this process involved regions throughout CNC. And I think the commitment that we've been hearing from you on the search team and your vision for this is really, how do we create unity? How do we pull people together? And Mark, you've shared with us some ideas on that, and you've alluded to that here this morning, in terms of using different leaders throughout different regions that you'll be investing in, and they'll be having, gatherings kind of within their own regions and their own areas. And I mean, the plan that you're coming in with is not one of just kind of letting things be, but really, how do we pull everyone together in a very comprehensive and intentional way? And that's something that I think we as a search team really appreciated, that you kind of didn't leave any region of CNC uninvolved in your plan. For the rest of the folks that are on this call, Mark actually had produced for us a sheet, a report on his intended travel schedule. And it was very methodical, Mark, just in terms of, how am I going to get to every corner of every part of CNC? And you literally have it mapped out so that you're making intentional investments in person all throughout the region: northern Minnesota, western Minnesota, cities, different parts of Iowa. I mean, it was really cool to see that level of intentionality, and so we're excited to see that come in. Okay, I'm going to give you two more, and then we're running short on time, so we'll see if we can do this quick. Your hope. What is your hope for churches in leadership transition? That's a pivotal moment in a church's life cycle. What do you think we can do, and how can we help?
Yeah, well, it's true of the church that I founded. So I'm newly aware of some of the unique pains that a church goes through in those moments of time of transition. And quite frankly, we're going to see more of it in the next 2.5 years than maybe we've seen in the past 10 combined. I think we're going to see a lot of transition for a lot of different reasons, COVID being chief amongst them. And so hopefully we can curb some of that with some intentional shepherding. But I'll be honest, I think that that we've got some tools in place through P3 that we can enhance and make even stronger an offering to our churches, where we're going to really need some of the best and brightest being sought and found, and then help them connect to our churches. I think that's going to be a unique moment in time for our churches to really leverage what's already true and make it even better.
Yeah, that's great. All right, final question, and I think we got to all the ones that came in. So again, thanks everybody for your participation. Mark, your hope for Trout Lake Camp and Pine Lake Camp.
Well, camping's obviously an important, unique element of Converge North Central. I have a hunger to see us crack the code on Pine Lake Camp. I don't know what the answer is. I spend a little bit of time, like I mentioned, down in Pine Lake Camp, and I know that we have a lot of work to do to make that an effective ministry. I'm hoping that we can continue to see camping be as strong, as significant work as it has been over the last 75, 80 years now. I remember hearing the stories of those who first began to walk out and pace out what Trout Lake Camp's land might possibly be. Kurt Hallstrom and others from Elam in Anoka, and they went up and they started to dream about what camping could become, and it has become a incubator more than anything else. It's been an incubator for leadership that I don't know that we're quite tapping as effectively as we could, and it has been an incredible evangelistic tool to help countless students accept Christ and say fun gospel. That matters. So.
Yeah, indeed. And Mark, that was so exciting to hear your passion, and even as part of our interview process, you were just kind of spitting out names of all these people who had grown up and had come out of Pine Lake Camp and had come out of Trout Lake Camp that are serving faithfully and well in ministry throughout CNC, and wanting to recapture and reclaim even more of that for those camps was really inspiring, and makes a great use of the gifts that God's given us in those camps and those assets. So Mark, well done going through some of these questions. I think we got through a majority of them. We're grateful for you and the process that you've been through. And so again, to all of those who are attending, thanks for being here today. Your presence is important. This has been recorded, and so we'll be giving this to the CNC offices. Do want to remind everybody to please mark your calendar, Friday, April 16th, 9 a.m. That's where we're going to do a virtual business meeting, and Mark, the purpose of that meeting will be to vote for you, and that's the privilege that we have here at CNC for our churches to be part of that process. So that'll be a special meeting, and all that information is found on the CNC webpage as well. So Mark, thanks for your being here and for following Jesus. Thanks for saying yes to this call. We're excited to see things move forward, and thanks to all of you for joining here today. Appreciate your time, and God bless, and we'll look forward to seeing you on April 16th. Thanks, everybody.